Hello and welcome to the 2021 Esri User Conference, Special Interest Group for Accessibility. Before we begin discussing Esri's accessibility efforts, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and invite you to submit questions throughout the session. We will respond in the Q&A window during the presentation as much as possible, and we'll address the remaining questions during the QA time at the end of the session. Until then, feel free to submit your own questions and press the like on others to upvote or prioritize some topics for the Q&A. Now, let's review our agenda for the session. We will kick things off today by introducing our panel of Esri presenters and accessibility subject matter experts, and then provide general information and updates about accessibility at Esri. Because the nature of these special interest groups is to facilitate two-way conversations, we'd like to kickstart the conversation by highlighting some accessibility features in ArcGIS products and existing accessibility resources. Otherwise, we're excited to hear your feedback and engage in the discussion for the remainder of the session. So we're excited to host this conversation about accessibility with you and are pleased to have this team of Esri staff on panel to discuss accessibility initiatives across the company. So let's take a moment for everyone to introduce themselves. Can you lead us off, Arjav?
Absolutely. I'm Arjav Burjatia. I'm a senior UX designer for ArcGIS Online, and I primarily focus on keyboard and screen reader accessibility as well as accessibility in terms of content authoring. Over to you, Aubrey.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Kinghorn. I work on ArcGIS Pro, and I'm incredibly passionate about accessible maps with regards to PDFs and layouts. Over to you, Sharmel.
Thanks. Sharmel Menzel. I'm a solution engineer on the national government team, and I work with accessibility and the federal agencies. Carl?
Hi again, everyone. I'm Carl Franz, a senior accessibility analyst at Esri, and I work with our product development around accessibility. Clara?
My name is Clara Schmidt, and I am a UI UX design lead on ArcGIS Hub and enterprise sites. I specialize in the technical aspects of accessibility and the WCAG guidelines. Ronan?
I'm Ronan Harris. I'm a staff attorney here at Esri, overseeing accessibility and compliance matters. Jessica?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica McCall, and I am the Accessibility Business Manager supporting our Esri Accessibility Program. I'm also today's moderator.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We're all excited to be here today and look forward to this conversation. So let's begin with the mission statement for our accessibility program, which is deploy cross-platform strategy to drive accessibility innovation in our product development, make a difference in our company culture, and support our users in successful implementation of GIS with robust and accessible software. Communicating our mission statement is important to us because there's value in defining why we care about accessibility. And this mission statement is meant to be an extension of Esri's core mission statement, only with a focus on accessibility innovation and supporting our users with accessible technology. Realistically, some level of disability impacts most people throughout their lifetime, sometimes permanently, but also in temporary or situational aspects. For example, we're familiar with permanent conditions of disability, such as blindness and deafness, but rarely consider an injured arm or being an occupied parent as a disability. The truth is that changes in our physical and mental capacities are part of aging, injury, and sickness, and occur naturally throughout the course of life. This slide shows a chart identifying examples of permanent, temporary, and situational conditions that have direct impact on touch, sight, hearing, and speech. Anyone new to the field or getting acquainted with accessibility as a topic might feel a bit overwhelmed by the acronym soup that we use to discuss digital accessibility topics. This slide contains many of these acronyms, such as A11Y, Section 508, WCAG, ACR, and VPAT, to name a few. First, what is A11Y? Well, the word accessibility contains 11 letters between the A and the Y, which has created the term A11Y, similar to L10N for localization and IETNN for internationalization. Let's define a few more of these to help with our conversation today. So inclusive design is simply using the design process to eliminate barriers for users of all types without special adaptations. Section 508 are the official accessibility standards within the US, while EN 301-549 are standards for digital products and services in the EU. WCAG or WCAG stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and these are used worldwide to define the conformance level of digital properties. Esri's current goal is to be in compliance with WCAG 2.1 AA. The VPAT or VPAT is the Voluntary Product Accessibility Template, which is used widely to organize WCAG success criteria. And finally, the ACR is the Accessibility Conformance Report that has been created and contextualized to a specific product. As noted on the previous slide, WCAG criteria are the current US and international accessibility standards and are organized into 3 general levels of conformance. Level A, the minimum, are most basic accessibility criteria that digital properties must satisfy. Level AA criteria address the most common barriers for disabled users, and digital properties are also responsible for satisfying these. Level AAA are not currently required, and digital properties may choose to address this level. Again, Esri currently targets the AA standards for WCAG 2.1 criteria. Accessibility Conformance Reports, or ACRs, are the manner in which these WCAG criteria are organized and how Esri documents the accessibility features of our products. ACRs for Esri products can be found in our Esri legal site. We attempt to keep the format and scope of these ACRs maintained to current global standards and are updating all reports to the 2.4 version of the VPAT and WCAG 2.1 standards. We've also included a contact form at the bottom of this page that can reach Esri Accessibility directly. In 2021, we've worked extensively with core product teams to consistently update accessibility documentation, including ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Online, and ArcGIS Enterprise. We are also prioritizing products that are in high demand or critical to our federal, state, and local government customers, who especially need accessibility documentation for procurement processes. These include many of our ArcGIS apps and app builders such as ArcGIS Web App Builder, ArcGIS Dashboards, ArcGIS Experience Builder, and the new ArcGIS Field Maps. Additionally, we're extending accessibility conformance in support of the Esri design system and our powerful field and mobile applications. In our reports, we're further incorporating international guidelines, such as the EN 301-549 European standards, and are excited to maintain this ambitious timeline to publish and update product accessibility documentation. So at this point, I'd like to shift focus to a series of product demonstrations and updates about new accessibility features in ArcGIS, starting with Aubrey Kinghorn, who will discuss Esri's professional desktop GIS application, ArcGIS Pro. Over to you, Aubrey.
Thank you, Carl. I'm excited to share with you guys some of the features for accessibility in ArcGIS Pro. First off, I want to talk about the setup of Pro itself. So right now I have Pro in what is considered the light theme. And so this is the standard theme for Pro. However, if you find this hard to read or annoying on your eyes, or have some other reasons that you just don't like this, or it's not working for you, we have the option, if you go to the Project tab, and under Options, licensing is going to load for a moment before it'll let me switch to Options. Under General, I can change the application theme from light to dark. This can be beneficial for various reasons. Personally, I prefer the light theme, and I have to restart the application. So we're going to keep it in light theme for this demo. But please know that that's an option if you prefer the dark theme or that's easier for you. Going back to my main screen, another accessibility feature that I really want to highlight in Pro is the ability to do keyboard navigation. So Pro has a lot of different pieces to it. So you'll notice here I have a layout, and this is considered a layout view. Over here is a catalog pane and a contents pane. I just clicked on all of these, but if I can't use a mouse for some reason, I can access all of these via keyboard shortcuts. It's always kind of awkward to demo keyboard shortcuts because you can't actually see my keyboard. But if I hit Control Tab, I get this pop-up that appears and it lists all the active panes and active views. And I can use my arrow keys to navigate between them. So I can switch to the contents pane and I will see that that's active and I can start tabbing through. Or I can use Control Tab again. I can go back to my layout view or the catalog pane or even the catalog view, which is open in my application as well. And so that's a way to navigate without requiring a mouse, which is very helpful. There are also one-handed shortcuts available and documented. One of the things that we have been really focusing on in Pro recently is something you guys have been asking for, and that's the ability to create accessible PDFs from ArcGIS Pro. We know that you need to share your maps and layouts with many people, and some of those people will be using screen readers. Previously, Pro didn't have a good way to export layouts so that a screen reader could access them. You would have to use a third-party software like Adobe Acrobat, my apologies, to turn a layout accessible. In 2.8, that is no longer the case. We've added support for accessible PDFs, including the ability to provide alt text and create tagged PDFs and do PDF metadata. Let me show you how this works. For certain layout elements, including map frames, charts, and pictures, which I don't have in this layout, I can provide alternate text so that someone who can't see this can still understand what the graphic is showing. If I right-click on a graphic element and choose Properties, it opens up the element pane. And now in 2.8, I can see a new accessibility section. When I expand it, I have the option to populate alt text. So you avoid having to watch me type. I'm just going to copy some alt text I wrote earlier and paste it in. So now I have alt text explaining what is going on in my bar chart. I've listed the values being shown, the periods being shown in this chart. I can do the same for my map, accessibility, alt text, and I will copy the alt text I wrote earlier and paste it in. And I'm explaining what is going on. Again, it's just map frames, chart frames, and pictures that have alt text with them. Legends, scale bars, and north arrows do not. At this point, we recommend putting the information that legends, scale bars, or north arrows convey either by using text on the layout. You can use dynamic text to show the scale or the north direction, or by putting that information in the alt text for the map frame itself. Or you can use a third-party software again and open this after it's exported and make some additional changes to mark your north arrow, etc. One other thing I want to point out that's not in regards to alt text, but just in regards to making an accessible PDF, is I have taken the information that is on the map, that's a heat map, and I've included it in this table here. It's not displayed in exactly the same way. Obviously, the table isn't showing the geographic properties, but it is showing the countries and the number of fossils in them, which is the point of this map. So that someone who can't see the map, even though they do have the alt text, has another way to get the information and knows that Tanzania has the most dinosaur fossils in on the African continent. The next thing I need to do is export this layout. So if I go to the Share tab and I choose to export my layout, and I set the file type to PDF, I will now see a new tab called Accessibility. This is very important because this is where all the accessible features for the PDF live. So if I click on that, I can choose to include the accessibility tags. You need to mark this if you want your PDF to be tagged as accessible so that a screen reader can read it. And then I can supply PDF metadata. Metadata is not unique to accessible PDFs. Any PDF can have metadata. However, it's very important in creating an accessible PDF. The screen reader will recognize a title. It can use keywords to search for things. It can read the subject. The language determines how the screen reader will read the text. And so this is important information. We wanted to put it on the accessibility pane so that you could access it easily. So I'll fill this out really quickly. And then when I choose to export, it will create an accessible PDF. To show you what that looks like, I've actually already run this export in both ArcGIS Pro 2.7 and ArcGIS Pro 2.8. And let's look at the difference in Adobe Acrobat. In ArcGIS Pro 2.7, if I run a basic accessibility check, I can see that my document has 5 issues. It's not a tagged PDF, so a screen reader can't pick up on this text in the table or in the title. The logical reading order needs a check. There's no language, so my screen reader doesn't know if this is text in English, Spanish, French. There's no title for it to read when it starts reading the document. And so these are all problems that I would have to then manually correct by using tools like Auto Tag Document and going through. I'm guessing a lot of you have done this before. It's not the most fun process, but if I go over into my export from Pro 2.8, I can see, and I run the same accessibility check, I can see that my document only has 2 issues, logical reading order and color contrast. Logical reading order and color contrast are always going to come up in the Acrobat accessibility check because they need manual confirmation. I need to determine if the reading order is logical, which is very important in a map layout where you don't necessarily read things just from top to bottom. You might have a right to left, or you might need to read the title first and it could be in the middle of the page. And my color contrast also needs a manual check. So these have to be done manually, but I won't have to run Auto Tag Document or any of these other things like I would have from a 2.7 export. If I go through and look at some other views, I can see that my alt text is available for my bar chart and my map. And if I look at the tags, I can see that my table has been tagged as a table so that it should be read properly, and that my figures have been tagged as figures and my text has been tagged as text. So these are some improvements that we've made to create accessible PDFs in ArcGIS Pro 2.8. We are not necessarily done with this functionality, and we would love to hear what you guys need in your accessible PDFs and what we can do to further support. So please share your ideas in the Pro Ideas sites with your contacts at Esri who can get the information to us so that we can continue to make this better for you guys. And that's my demo. So I would like to turn the time over to Charmel, who's going to talk to you about accessibility in apps.
Thanks, Aubrey. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All good? Well, I'm going to move on to field operations and field apps. I work a lot with customers who are collecting data outside and citizen science activities. So I have a passion for field apps. And the ArcGIS system has various field apps that you can select from depending upon your needs, your workflow. And today I'm going to touch on the accessibility capabilities of these 3 apps used by field staff. Now, Survey123 has available an accessibility conformance report. That's very important for a lot of the agencies. Field apps is in the review stage, and we expect to have an ACR by the end of the year. And Quick Capture is about to begin the review. So one of the reasons why I enjoy being part of this SIG, and all of us enjoy being part of this SIG, is that, just as Aubrey said, we like to hear from you and understand which products we should focus on for our next conformance report planning. So let's talk a little bit more about Survey123. Now, based on the version 3.11 release, last fall, an ACR was provided to the public. The report covers the website to create the forms, and I call it the Survey Web Designer, Survey123 Web Designer, and published forms that you use for people to fill out the questionnaires using a website. I have to tell you, I'm so impressed with the product teams and the developers, because before the report was even made public, they were already improving accessibility for future releases. Later this year, the enhancements that are addressing accessibility planned include ensuring the web app has unique IDs in the form element, which was an impediment for screen reader support. Adding ARIA attributes. Now, if you are new to accessibilities, these are the attributes in the code that identify the features for user interaction. These are the attributes our developers need to add into the code for our products. So for example, this lets you know if it's a button, so different actions occur if it's a button, or if it's a drop-down list, or if it's a table. These were created by the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative. In addition, improvements for contrast ratio and navigating through the repeats are currently being added. So it's time for me now to show you what exists in the version available today. Now I'm in the Survey123 web designer, working on a form to collect data related to the dinosaur fossils that Aubrey displayed in ArcGIS Pro. I've got to collect that data. And within the designer, I have a color background. I want to change that to an image. And newer with the release is that when you add an image, and I'm going to select an image from one of my files. When you add an image, new is the ability to add that alternative text. So this is an African desert, since I always type it dessert. And so now we have the background and it has alt text related to it. Let's go ahead and look at the final form in the web browser. Now I have just to let you know that within, I'm using Google Chrome, and I have put the contrast very high for my background, but I also have added an extra box that you'll see up here momentarily within wherever my tab is, because I want to show you where my cursor is as I go through this web form. So you see that I first click and it says skip to main content. And just like Aubrey, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing with the keyboard. So I press enter and I'm now in the main content, and I will use my arrow keys to move over to the geological time period, Jurassic in this case. I'm going to press tab, move down to the next question, and then using my arrow keys, I will go to the location. In this case, it's Egypt. I've selected Egypt. Now this is a single choice, kind of a different layout. Within Survey123, you have multiple ways of asking for input. And another one is that drop-down list. So if I wanted to say country, let me go ahead and select it from a drop-down list. I'd hit enter on my keyboard navigation. And again, let me select Egypt, pressing enter, tab to get to the number of fossils found, then the discovery date. Now with my survey, I have it automatically set to the current date. Today is July 15th, but they found the fossils last month. So I'm going to go ahead, go to June 22nd, and I'm going to hit enter, discovery date. And then finally for the location, I am going to refine my location, and I had to look this up for Egypt. And now I have my location and I have the form ready to enter and submit. That's a brief look at what's available today in the web forms Survey123. Now on Esri's roadmap for field apps, we're going to be working on ACRs, the accessibility conformance reports that everyone wants to see related to these native apps for Survey123, field maps, and quick capture. Now these are the apps that you download from your favorite store, Apple or Google Play. we expect that because we have to adhere to such strict standards to even be allowed to allow these apps in the specific app stores, that there's not going to be a lot of hurdles to make these accessible. So we're looking forward to those reports, and they will be coming as soon as the review process is done. I have to say that the field application product teams for field maps, Survey123, and Quick Capture have already been working on that tab navigation, including removing any keyboard traps, ensuring logical tab order, having that immediate access to the second level options, and then with accelerator keys. Now, these are keyboard shortcuts that improve the usability and accessibility. I showed you a few. There's a few more accelerator keys that are being added. Also, those ARIA attributes, and using Esri's common design system, where there's changes to one component can be implemented across the ArcGIS apps. So that's a brief look at the mobile apps and field operations. Now I'm going to hand it over to Arjav, who's going to give a deeper dive into ArcGIS Online.
Thank you so much, Sharmel. Give me just 1 second. I will get that started. All right, now that I'm sharing my screen, we can get that started. I'm not sure if my content is going to be as cool as searching for dinosaurs, but hopefully I'll try to keep this interesting. We're going to be speaking about ArcGIS Online and primarily about the ArcGIS Online homepage, where we've made a bunch of accessibility improvements that I would be walking through with you today. So we would be looking at the homepage to begin with, and we have the option to edit the homepage on the page. So I will go in and open the homepage editor. We have options to manipulate the content as well as manipulate the design. One thing to point out is that the content you put on the page typically is unique to the organization, and therefore it is hard to assume how we can make that accessible, but we can take steps to make sure that in terms of color and typography, we provide you a very accessible solution for your homepage. Diving into colors, we provided two different options here, and I will speak to that in just a second. So we have the preset themes, and this is the recommended route that the designers of ArcGIS Online have kind of put together, so that no matter what theme you select, we would be maintaining the contrast level for the text for each and every block of content that you have on the page. So an example of that would be going in, and right now you can see that I have the gray theme selected. I can hit enter to open the menu and go ahead and select something else, like the green theme, for example. What that does is that it automatically applies different styles using shades of green to your whole page. And you do have the option to then go in and make those changes, so that, let's say that the reserve for UC demo, this particular content block, you want it to be a different shade of green, you can go ahead and do that. And one thing you would notice is that automatically the foreground color, that is the text color, has changed. And this ensures that there is a sufficient amount of contrast with the background. So using preset themes and colors is one way to ensure that all of the text content on your page is accessible to your customers. The second option that's available under colors is using custom themes. And what that allows you to do is use your organization's brand colors. This is a very popular request amongst people who customize their ArcGIS Online homepage. They want to represent their brand and make sure that when customers come to the page, they have a similar experience as their other web offerings. So this is where you can add a custom style. So I will hit enter and open the add custom style modal. And one thing that we have made available here is a contrast and legibility checker. So this is an offering that we're hoping to permeate across ArcGIS Online. But basically what that allows you to do is you can set up your own custom theme with the different brand colors you want for the background, title, summary, and the link color for any block of content on your homepage. And when you go in, you can go ahead and select different colors. And what this legibility and contrast checker would do is it will look at your link or summary or title color, compare it with the background, and provide you a value of contrast, which helps you understand if that particular content is legible or not legible. So in this case, the link and button color is not legible. And this is based on VCAG standards for contrast and color requirements. So contrast ratio of 4.5 or above is recommended as a AAA value for small to medium text. And in this case, we've also applied it to the large text. If I have a not legible color and I choose to hit save, we would warn you again. We would let you know that this contrast is not sufficient to ensure legibility for all users. And at this point, we give you a choice. This is your homepage, and you do have the choice to proceed with your brand colors. But if something is not legible, we would recommend going back and changing that to an appropriate color. In this case, I would just cancel out at this point. And I do have 2 custom themes set up already, and I've used contrasting colors to set it up. What I can do, though, is go into the Apply a Style section, and I could apply these 2 custom colors to alternative styles. And what that does pretty much is it gives me the ability to create this striped effect on the page. And in this way, I can have like multiple brand colors available on the page and still have a really aesthetically pleasing experience for our customers. One thing you might have noticed is that there doesn't seem to be an apparent effect on the cover image section. And this is where we can go into the header section and make some of those changes. So there are 2 options for cover images as well. You can use a stock cover, or you can use a custom cover. What we've done with the stock cover is provide you a variety of options where when I would select a different stock cover like this one, automatically the title color would adjust, and we would add a layer of opacity so that no matter what title color you've selected, there would at least be a certain amount of contrast available in order to improve legibility. I do have the option in this case to switch to something else like this. And this is where you can see that layer of opacity is very apparent. At this point, you could choose to switch to a different color, and the color that we're using for opacity would change automatically so that, again, there is sufficient contrast between the cover and the background. This works pretty well on the stock covers that we offer, but it is also applicable to the custom covers to a certain extent. We would recommend not to choose a dark cover with a dark title and a light cover with a light title. But even if you do have this option to manipulate the opacity. So I would enter the layout options, and I have the overlay opacity slider. I would manipulate this and adjust accordingly. So one thing to note here is if you really try and remove that opacity layer, chances are your text content might not be visible on the image you selected. So we would recommend maintaining it at least a medium value so that even a combination of a dark image and dark text would still be legible. We have spoken a bit about accessibility in terms of colors. There is also the notion of accessibility in terms of typography. And in this case, we're primarily focused on selecting languages that can be translated into a wider variety, selecting fonts that can be translated into a wider variety of languages. So once again, we provide you with two options. You can use the preset themes, or you can set up your own custom theme. We would recommend starting with the preset theme, since these two fonts that we have combined together tend to support a wide variety of languages. So we have the default Avenir as title and body, but you could switch to something that has a serif and a sans serif combination. So in this case, it's a very simple one-button solution, and it applies to your whole page simultaneously. Another option, if your organization has specific brand fonts that they want to use, we've provided some commonly used fonts that you can create a pair with. So you can create a title and body pair that applies to the page. And I opened this menu for the title font. And in this case, I'm going to be selecting Roboto. And I can do, I can make a different choice, or I could select Roboto again for the body font as well. So it is a very quick and effective way of making these changes. The set of 12 fonts that I demonstrated right now includes some classic fonts like Verdana and Times New Roman, as well as some more modernized ones like Roboto and Montserrat. But again, we've tried to maintain a list that has that can be translated easily, at least in a few languages. These are kind of the main features that we have updated in the homepage editor. One thing I would point out, the editor itself, we have included a number of keyboard and screen reader updates so that you can navigate more successfully within the editor. And in addition to that, we do have onboarding information that you can access by hitting enter on the information icon. And it gives you a little bit of information about these preset and custom themes. So this is something you can access under typography or under colors. This is pretty much what we have for the ArcGIS Online homepage editor today. And I would be handing it back to Carl. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Arjav. And thank you to everyone, that panel of demonstrations. Let's see, I'm going to jump back into this deck. Can someone confirm we can see that? Great. So I'd like to rejoin the discussion at this point at the end to point to a few more useful resources. The first is a reminder that that ArcGIS Accessibility Conformance reports are located on the Esri legal site. And additionally, Esri's statement of commitment to accessibility and details about Esri product compliance with US and international accessibility standards, as well as common questions about accessibility, can also be found here. Next, the Esri Community for Accessibility. If you're not yet familiar with Esri communities, please visit and interact with Esri customers, staff, and others in the GIS and geospatial professional community. Connect, collaborate, and share experiences here. And finally, I'm very excited to announce a new information and resource site dedicated to Esri and ArcGIS accessibility. So this site provides a lot of information about accessibility at Esri, including ArcGIS accessibility articles and blogs, best practices, documentation, such as the conformance reports, educational videos and presentations, and a lot of additional resources. You'll be able to contact Esri Accessibility from any page in the site directly through our contact form. We are absolutely thrilled to have introduced this to the Esri.com ecosystem and look forward to expanding upon this moving forward. So thank you for following along with us this far. At this point, we want to know how we can help you. What types of resources are you looking for? Is it training or documentation? What accessibility topics are most important to you? Perhaps assistive technologies, such as screen readers. What questions or comments about ArcGIS accessibility do you have? We'd love to hear from you. To any other Esri staff on the call, please feel free to jump in, but I'd like to invite Jessica into the conversation to help moderate this Q&A portion. Thanks, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. Great to have you here. There are some really great questions, and there's a lot of them. So we're going to try and get to as many of them as possible. I think that the first one that we wanted to address, I'm going to address to Clara. And the question comes from Anonymous. As someone who is neurodiverse, autistic, and ADHD, found quite a few story maps and applications hard to use. What I want to know is what are some strategies and guidelines for accessibility for neurodiversity? Clara, can you take that one?
Sure. So at a high level, I know the W3C is actually looking for more people that fit that, that have that neurodivergent thinking, because they don't have a lot of explicit guidelines. So the things that I know about, I learned from Shell Little, and I learned during like an accessibility conference a little bit earlier this year. But she talked about how having one of the things that, like some of the things that can be difficult for neurodivergent is having unavoidable motion, flashing or blinking content, things that autoplay, like auto rotation when captions are missing from audio or video that's included, and sort of some of those dark patterns that exist on the web. So I know this has come up within Hub. We are often asked for a carousel, and we just aren't building out the feature because we don't want to do an auto rotation carousel that would be distracting to users that come into the system. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of other information, but if you look her up, she's got a lot of good information on the web. So that's Shell Little from Wells Fargo.
Thanks, Clara. Appreciate that. Another question that we have, and I'm going to address this to Aubrey. I see that you already kind of replied, but maybe you can just talk about it a little bit because there were a couple questions related to it. It'd be helpful to have an option for Pro, not just dark or light. The dark theme and the light theme sometimes don't have enough contrast. Is there another way for a user to adjust this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't have an ability to adjust things in Pro itself. You can use some of the Windows tools to change the contrast if that works for you. But what I would recommend here is to share this on the ArcGIS Pro Ideas site. We take that site very seriously. And if there are some applications that have a theme that you think works really well and provides a good level of contrast for your work, please share that with us so that we can check out kind of what that contrast looks like, what that color scheme looks like, and consider using that in future versions of Pro.
Thanks, Aubrey. So we had a couple of different suggestions and questions about learn lessons as well as video demos. I think that that is something that we are definitely looking at, and I'm kind of answering for all the teams, and that, you know, the learn lessons, yes, that's definitely something that we want to pursue with our product teams. There are also, you know, other resources that Carl pointed out that are available on our website right now, but blogs, videos, learn lessons, those are all things that we're exploring with our teams. And like Aubrey just said, one of the best ways to engage is through our ArcGIS community. All the product teams have a place where you can give them ideas, and there is also the accessibility community, which we listen to as well. There was a question from Lucas, and Carl, I'm going to address this to you. Is there a site that lists what Esri products have accessibility functionality available and which ones don't but are planned, etc.?
Yeah,
Can you talk about our program?
Thanks. Yeah, this is a great question. I think we often are asked about, you know, which products have which accessibility features, and of course, as I said, there's so many, and we organize around WCAG that currently the documentation that we have per product at the product level are the accessibility conformance reports. What that does mean, however, is a certain understanding and level of comfort with WCAG success criteria, you know, because those documents are organized by the WCAG success criteria. So that and those documents are absolutely the the closest you'll get to having a really specific understanding of accessibility features related to any ArcGIS products. And then I saw some chats come through, or some messages in the chat come through, like, for example, about other resources, like for ArcGIS Pro, is there anything about how to use it with a keyboard? And the answer is yes, that like per product, if you look at the product pages, there are some supporting documentation and language there, in addition to the blogs that we put out around the use of our products. So the accessibility conformance reports are very specific, and then the blogs and the videos are more descriptive of how to use it. But we don't have a page that, or a site that directly says which success criteria are being met by which product. And we definitely encourage anyone interested in the products to look a little bit more deeply into those product pages, and certainly the conformance reports. Yeah.
Thanks, Carl. I appreciate that. Let's look at a couple of other questions. We have another one that was asking about alt text. I think that one actually came in a couple of different forms. Would somebody like to take that one? Maybe Clara, do you want to talk a little bit about alt text?
What makes good alt text?
Yep, what makes good alt text? That would be great.
So good alt text is, in this question, it's better to be succinct than use long flowy language, even though I know sometimes it's tempting to pack a lot of keywords in there, because SEO also sometimes, but that's not the best practice to use your alt text for SEO. So what you want to do is you want to avoid using image of or picture of, because assistive technologies will already pick up on the fact that the image is considered an image element, and they'll be communicating that. So being succinct, using details and surrounding text, especially if the image offers something that the surrounding text does not offer. So if it's a picture of something that isn't displayed in the text, you want to communicate that. If it is super redundant to the text, so say I have an author's picture next to the author's name, I might actually want to hide the author's profile picture, because it wouldn't offer a lot of unique information to their name, rather than describing what they look like. And so that would be my recommendations for good alt text.
Thanks, Clara. There's another question specifically about colorblind friendly maps. Arjav, I'm going to direct this question to you. I think you may have issued a reply, but it'd be great to discuss it. Anonymous says, I've started using the Windows display filters to view my maps for colorblind friendly maps and apps. It's not just the symbology that we need to examine. Totally agree. Is there a plan to incorporate filtering the display directly in ArcGIS products?
So one thing that the new map view does is include colorblind friendly ramps. So in terms of building maps within ArcGIS Online, that would be my recommendation, where you would select a colorblind friendly ramp, as well as select an appropriate base map, so that the combination would ensure a good experience for someone who has color blindness.
Thanks, Arjav. There's another question that's come in here about ArcGIS Pro and Online. Maybe Aubrey and Arjav can tag team on it, but I'll start with Aubrey. Do any of the accessibility information that you add into ArcGIS Pro translate to ArcGIS Online if you publish the map?
That's a great question. So, and I didn't clarify this during my presentation, but the accessible stuff I was showing, particularly with alt text and so on, that is done in the layout. So it's not set on your map. So if you publish a map, it doesn't get persisted because it was never set on the map to begin with. It was set on the map frame in the layout. However, if you share an accessible PDF layout to your ArcGIS Online account, then you will have the accessible functions of the PDF available. But we don't right now have a way to provide information from the map itself to ArcGIS Online when you publish via Pro. Am I correct in that, Arjav?
I would think so, yes. And we can confirm that as well.
Great, thanks, guys. There's another question that's come in about GIS analysts who have disabilities. And Carl, I'm going to address this to you. What advice would you give to us GIS analysts who have disabilities and work with GIS?
It's a fantastic question. And I think that every member of this conversation would love to join the panel of people trying to answer that question and create, I think, tools and technology that are the resources, the tooling that you need. One thing I would like to speak to is that at Esri, we definitely look at accessibility and disability through the social model. We don't look at the user as the barrier as much as we look at the technology being the barrier. So all of the work that we're doing on the teams across the platform champion that model, that while there is a lot of development progress to make on our side, we are looking at disability and accessibility through that social model lens. And because of that, are incredibly interested in creating software that removes the barrier to begin with. And then, as I've seen some of the questions in the chat, provide functions and within the tooling to help create accessible products, right? And so what I would like to say shortly is stay in contact with us. And I'd open this up to other people on the panel too, but the point I wanted to make was, please meet us in the middle. Help us understand how our technology is meeting your needs or the needs of people you represent, and help us understand that and stay active in communication with us via Esri Accessibility contact form at the bottom of every accessibility or site on our Esri Accessibility site, as well as the other paths to reach us through ideas, through our community site. Yeah, that's my instinct on that question. Is there anyone else on the panel that has a perspective on that?
I would love to say something if I could. I think the biggest thing that I love about GIS is there are a million ways to solve any given problem. Every time I look at a problem and I solve it one way, I'll talk to my friends or colleagues in different industries and they will have solved it a completely different way. So one of the cool things about working as a GIS analyst, if you have a disability or you think differently, is you still get to solve your problems and you can show other people a better way to do that too. So I second what Carl says about keep us in the loop, because we want to learn from your solutions to do things that can make it better for people who have the same challenges as you, or just people in general who can benefit from your unique way of thinking and doing things that we can maybe integrate into our software or share with our user community.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. We have about 10 minutes left in our session, so we're going to try and get through a few more questions. Charmel, there was a question that came out that I thought maybe was related to your presentation that I wanted to address. Is ArcGIS Indoors Viewer or mobile app accessible? And do you want to kind of talk about maybe mobile accessibility a little bit?
Hey, thanks. Yes, ArcGIS Indoors has a viewer application, which is online. And while I guess, Carl, you could confirm this, ArcGIS Indoors has not been under a review, or Jessica, no. So we would like to find out, again, from you, if that's a high priority and what issues that you have addressed. Now, I have to admit that even though we say it's not been under the review, it doesn't mean that it's completely, inaccessible. When we add components to one of our applications, like the ArcGIS Online instant apps, they can be integrated into apps across the platform, across the system, into like ArcGIS Indoors Viewer. So we want to work with you a little bit further. I responded directly to him, but the Esri Accessibility at esri.com, or also that Esri community for accessibility. I put that link in a couple of my responses. So I can't wait till after this session, how active you guys are going to be in that session. We're going to be there with you answering those questions. Yeah. You have wonderful ideas.
Yes.
Thanks, Charmel. There's a question that's about specifically our VPATs. And Ronan, I thought maybe you could take this question. It says, have our VPATs been updated to reflect accessibility features? Do you want to talk a little bit about our VPATs?
Yeah, of course. That's a good question. So we work continuously to make sure that our VPATs ACRs are updated as consistently as possible. We want our users to be up to date in our levels of conformance and accessibility. With that in mind, what we have currently, we as a US-based company, we utilize the revised section 508 VPAT, which is WCAG 2.0. However, as Carl alluded to and talked about a little bit, what we also do is provide a level of customization there with that. We have now since included levels WCAG 2.1, level AA, to account for our international customers who are now moving to with that standard. Make sure that it's clear and concise in one document for not just our US-based customers, but our international users as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Ronan. Carl, I'm going to point this question to you. It's from Olga. It says that I've noticed many of the Esri web applications have inconsistent menus and commands. For instance, clicking your user profile in the upper right corner is different in the home app and dashboards. Is there anything planned to do with this? Maybe also Arjav, you can contribute a little bit as well.
This is a really interesting question, and I think it points to the general cohesion, right? How cohesive is a platform in terms of its design and development. And so what you have seen over years are ArcGIS products becoming more streamlined and more consistent, using more components from our design system, and working to consolidate even some, we did have some, for example, mobile apps, collector and whatnot, that are now being some of our field operations mobile apps that are now being kind of pulled under an umbrella under field maps, right? And so those consolidation and design and development, I think, streamlining efforts are how we mitigate this problem, because yes, you will see that. And I think that, yeah, the more we move forward and work to streamline and consolidate our design and development voice through that design system, the more consistency we can expect to see moving forward. I welcome anyone else from the panel to contribute to that as well.
I think I would echo what Carl said. As you mentioned, like ArcGIS Online, for example, as we're striving to use more and more components from Esri's design system, you should be seeing that it getting more consolidated. And as it's getting more consolidated and using the same component, you should have the same experience when interacting with a keyboard, mouse, or screen reader.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time on that question. We have about 2 minutes left in our session, so we're going to do a couple of really quick and fast questions, see if we can get a few more in. Question for Carl. Do we have lists of accessibility features or failures for the individual story maps and web apps type?
Again, that's the conformance reports we have on our accessibility conformance reports pages via Esri Accessibility and Esri Legal Accessibility.
Thanks. Arjav, why doesn't Esri build an integrated accessibility checker app that works on Web App Builder? And that could be also for Aubrey, since they do mention Adobe related PDFs.
I think when it comes to any mapping component in our web maps or apps, that's kind of where it gets tricky, where it's not always, like we cannot always be certain that something is accessible or not based on the content that's being used, which is unique to a user or an organization. But including more integrated accessibility features, that's something Esri is striving for, absolutely. Like as you saw with the homepage editor, where we had like an integrated check for contrast. So like any opportunities like this, we would definitely try to capitalize on, and hopefully you should see that more in future updates.
I think we've got only just a few seconds left. So I really want to thank everybody for your time on these questions. If your question didn't get answered, you're more than welcome to reach out to any of us via the tiles on the main screen. And, we're happy to help you in any way that we can.